was late November when I agreed to pet sit for a couple who lived in a large home just outside of town. They were going on a week-long vacation and needed someone to watch their two cats, Milo and Bella. I had done pet-sitting gigs before, but something about this house felt different from the moment I stepped inside. The house itself was older, with high ceilings and long hallways. It had a strange, empty atmosphere, even though the furniture and decor were cozy. The couple gave me a quick tour, handed me a list of instructions, and left in a hurry. They seemed tense, as if they wanted to get away as soon as possible. That should have been my first clue that something was off. The first night was uneventful. I fed the cats, watched some TV, and eventually went to bed in the guest room. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. I shrugged it off and fell asleep. The second night, things got strange. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of scratching. It was coming from inside the closet of the guest room. My heart pounded as I sat up, staring at the door. The cats were both on the bed with me, their ears perked, staring at the closet as well. Trying to calm my nerves, I told myself it was probably just the house settling. But as I reached for my phone to check the time, I heard it again, a slow, deliberate scratching, like nails dragging across wood. I gathered my courage and got out of bed, walking slowly toward the closet. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. I yanked the door open. Nothing. Just an empty closet with some extra blankets and coats. I let out a shaky breath and turned to go back to bed. That's when I noticed something strange. The hallway light was on. I was sure I had turned off all the lights before bed. I walked into the hallway, but no one was there. That night, I barely slept. On the third night, it got worse. Around midnight, I was in the living room watching TV when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps upstairs. My stomach dropped. The couple had told me there was no one else in the house and the doors had been locked all night. I slowly crept up the stairs, my phone flashlight shaking in my hand. As I reached the top, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The door to the master bedroom, which had been shut since I arrived, was now slightly open. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Then, I heard a whisper. Faint, almost inaudible, but I knew I wasn't imagining it. Leave. That was enough for me. I ran downstairs, grabbed my keys, and bolted out the front door, not even bothering to grab my bags. I sat in my car, my hands shaking as I dialed the couple's number. They didn't answer. The next morning, I forced myself to go back inside to grab my things. The house felt eerily still, as if nothing had happened. But when I went to the guest room, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. On the closet door, deep scratches lined the wood, and scrawled just beneath them, as if written with a shaking hand, were the words, "You should have listened." I never went back to that house, and the couple never contacted me again. It was late December when I agreed to pet sit for a family who lived in a large house on the outskirts of town. They were leaving for the holidays and needed someone to watch their 3 dogs, Charlie, Luna, and Baxter. I had done plenty of pet-sitting jobs before, but something about this house made me uneasy from the moment I arrived. The house itself was old, with creaky wooden floors and dim lighting. The couple gave me a quick rundown of the dogs' routines, handed me the keys, and rushed out the door, as if eager to leave. I found it odd, but I shrugged it off. The first night was peaceful. The dogs were well behaved, and I spent the evening watching TV in the living room. But as I settled into the guest bedroom later that night, I heard something strange, soft tapping on the window. I hesitated, then pulled back the curtain, nothing but darkness and snow falling outside. I told myself it was just a branch in the wind, and went to sleep. The second night, things got unsettling. Around 1 a.m., I heard scratching at the back door. At first, I assumed it was one of the dogs, but when I checked, they were all in the living room, asleep. The scratching continued, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging against the wood. My stomach tightened. I turned on the porch light and peered outside, but the yard was empty. That night, I barely slept. On the third night, it got worse. I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when I heard a sound from upstairs, a door creaking open. My breath caught in my throat. The family had told me not to use any of the upstairs rooms, and I hadn't. But now, one of the doors was open. I crept up the stairs, gripping my phone with a shaking hand. As I reached the top, I saw that the master bedroom door was ajar. The room was dark, but I could see movement inside, a shadow shifting near the window. Then I heard it, a whisper, low and breathy, "Get out." I turned and bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping over the dogs as they barked frantically. I grabbed my coat and keys, ran outside, and sat in my car, my hands shaking as I dialed the family's number. No answer. The next morning, I forced myself to go back inside to grab my things. The house was eerily silent, but when I entered the guest room, I froze. On the wall above the bed, in large, jagged letters, was a message carved into the wood. "You were warned." I left immediately and never looked back. The family never reached out, and I never asked any questions. But to this day, I still wonder who or what was in that house with me. I live in a quiet suburban area, but there are a lot of more densely populated towns within driving distance of me. A few months ago, I picked up a night shift security job at a warehouse. A few towns over, it was situated in this industrial space that stretched on for miles. The building itself was isolated with rows and rows of tall metal shelves and a couple of big loading docks. The work was easy routine checks, basic security, making sure everything stayed locked up. It was quiet, usually too quiet, but I didn't mind. I liked the solitude. And most nights I could finish my shift without much happening. It was a Thursday night and it was pouring out. I was checking my phone every so often for updates on the storm as I wasn't too keen on having to drive home in those conditions. Luckily, there wasn't much forma to da that night, so at least that going from the power in the warehouse flickered a few times, but held steady, so I wasn't too worried. But about an hour in, the power finally gave out, plunging warehouse into pitch black darkness. I was pissed. I was the only employee there that night, so the responsibility for restoring the power was mine. I had obviously been prepped for a situation like this, but I never thought I'd ever have to actually deal with it. I stepped out of my little security room to begin the process. They had instructed me to unplug some of the massive machines before checking the breakers. So that's what I went to do. My flashlight was the only source of light in the whole place. It was honestly creepy. The silence felt thicker in the dark, and every creak of the building seemed louder without the hum of the lights. My footsteps echoed like 100 times louder too, which was definitely an odd feeling. As I was patrolling one of the aisles, I heard a loud metallic clattering echoing from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. It startled me, but I brushed it off as a storm rattling the roof or the metal shutters. Still, I decided to check it out, aisle by aisle, when I rounded one corner. It froze. A faint beam of light was moving along the shelves. Up ahead, it looked just like my own flashlight. It clicked off as quickly as I had seen it, but I had definitely seen it. Noon should have been there until the morning, though. I felt my heart start to race. Why the hell would someone else be in here? I debated calling out, but ultimately decided against it. When I reached the spot where I had seen the light, it was gone. It was empty, just rows of crates and shelves stacked high with inventory. I started freaking out, knowing I wasn't going crazy. I knew what is all. I had a job to do, though. I debated calling the police, but wasn't sure if what I had seen would be enough. I guess there was a slight chance I could have imagined it in hindsight. Had the company note equipped me with an answer, I probably would have just called the police, right? There, as I continued my patrol, a strange smell hit me, a musty metallic odor like rusted metal or stagnant water. The smell was coming from one of the loading bays, a darker part of the warehouse, where crates were stacked up floor to ceiling. I followed the smell with my flashlight, and that's when I noticed something odd. My beam reflected the polished concrete floor, revealing 2 sets of wet footprints leading into one of the storage aisles. In that moment, I wanted to run in the opposite direction and call the police, but I couldn't just yet. Yon was poking around. It was on meth. That was literally my job. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to follow the trail. I kept my flashlight low, not wanting to make it obvious where I was. As it got closer, I started hearing faint whispers, just barely audible, like 2 people having a conversation a few miles away. I couldn't make out the words, but something about the tone sounded tense, almost urgent. I clicked off my flashlight and held my breath, trying not to make any noise. I gripped my taser and crept closer to the whispering. As I turned the corner, I raised my flashlight to confront whoever was there, but there was, honest to God, noon in front of me. The whispering had also stuck ops, which was pure insanity. They had literally been right in front of me. How the hell had they disappeared so quickly? The whole situation had me rattled. I decided that I wasn't getting paid enough for this, so I decided to just make a beeline for the circuit room and get the power on without worrying about my other tasks. I made it there and started fumbling around with the breakers in the dark. As I was doing that, I heard something scrape across the floor. Nearby, I swung my flashlight around and spotted the edge of a metal tool laying just a few feet away. But Crowbareth hadn't been there before this was serious. Now whoever was in there with me had potentially malicious intentions. I yelled out that I was armed, which was kind of a half-bluff considering the taser. I needed to get out of the Rees fast as possible. My nerves were shot at that point, but I knew my life was more valuable than whatever consequences I'd face for. Leaving as I was shedding for the door, a loud metallic crash echoed from the far end of the building, followed by the unmistakable sound of rushing footsteps. I felt a surge of adrenaline and started running toward the noise. I turned the corner, and there they were standing in the middle of the aisle, were two figures dressed all in black, one of them, Wash holding a crowbar identical to the one I had just walked past. They looked at me for a split second, and then without warning started sprinting directly towards me. I didn't think I just turned and ran. All the confidence I had just mustered up was gone. I could hear their footsteps bounding behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I weaved through the aisles praying that I'd be able to navigate this place better than they could. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps faded. I paused, catching my breath, and realized they weren't chasing me anymore. Eventually, they made me way toward the exit door and stepped outside. I immediately called the police and begged them to come as quickly as possible. They actually arrived pretty quickly, which I was thankful for. Of course, those two strangers were long gone by then, but the officers were really helpful and even helped me get my power back up. My boss was not as sympathetic though. He gave me for running, and I almost lost my job over the whole incident. I still can't get over how strange the whole encounter was. Like, it was clear that those people were messing with me, but they still chased me with a weapon. The worst part is, I still work nights in that warehouse, although my boss did start putting at least 2 people on the shift every night. I still don't know what to make of the whole thing. I'm just glad those guys didn't catch up to me.